Good morning class, this is your instructor. Today I'm going to be talking about the global accounting standards, which are the IFRS, which are the International Financial Reporting Standards, and how we're supposed to be doing international trade based on exchange of currency. So this is chapter 15 from William Haka Bettner Carcello's 18th edition, and the name of the chapter is Globalization. So as is global accounting based on the International Financial Reporting Standards and how you're supposed to harmonize the standards. So first of all, I'm just going to be giving you a slight idea of why we need the standards. These are basically set of regulations. They have been prepared from the International Accounting Standards Board, and this board is basically situated in the United Kingdom. And why we need these standards is basically because of the need to harmonize the practices. So we need to have all the exchange according to a set of rules and regulations which would impact the direction of the trade and the business. Why we link that with accounting is because we need to report these in financial statements. So if you have sales, Pakistan is going to be dealing with India. So now India is not going to be taking Pakistan's currency, and we are not going to be taking India's currency. Similarly, Bangladesh is not going to be taking Japan's currency, which is yen. So there was a need to have a universal currency which could actually aid in converting to other currencies which all the countries would be accepting. So first of all, this was the International Standards Board, Accounting Standards Board, and then it was the International Financial Reporting Council, which was via the IFRS Foundation that helped in harmonizing through the these you can say international reporting standards and rules. So let's just look at the brief requirement. And first of all, what is the International Standards Board's purpose? So if you can see that what it says is that you need a standard setting body, and this standard setting body was the International Accounting Standards Board, and that was engaging with the stakeholders around the world. And in this case, who are the stakeholders? They are the very creditors, the you can say the lenders, the shareholders. They would want to know how the company is progressing, how they are performing financially. And usually the trade that takes place, so the businesses are going about with the concept of you can say credit sales or purchase. As you will see also ahead, then you need to make payments, but there is an accrual system of accounting. So accrual basically means that you can maybe do the transaction and then recognize the expense or the income later on. And in this case, as you can see, the standard setters needed some globally recognized rule which would be acceptable to all. So Germany, France, as you can see that there are around 200 major companies that are in France and United Kingdom, in the United States, and 150 companies that are also included in Japan. And China is also having a lot of influence. But you can say that out of the major players, there's France, there's Germany, there's United Kingdom, there's America or North America. They were wanting to have their own set of rules which would enable, because since they are the major players, so their rules would be acceptable worldwide. So they needed some common wavelength to deal with international buying and selling. And in this case, this was more acceptable. As you can see, there's G20 is a group of companies that were established around this period. Okay, so now then this was international ISS. First was International Accounting Standards. Then came the IFRS, which were the International Financial Reporting Standards, which were the aftermath of the SOX 2002, which was actually the Sarbanes-Oxley Act in 2002. And after that, the IFRS were introduced. That took effect in 2005, as a matter of fact. And in Pakistan, you can see that this was in 2007 onwards more effective. Because when a rule is introduced, it takes some time to take effect, full effect, in fact, to get into progress. So then this was also very much required because there were not all of the rules and regulations that were practically required, or not all of them were being included at that time in ISSS. So they needed something which was different. They needed something which was more thorough and had depth. So they needed IFRS at that time, and that is why this was also to enhance the disclosure requirements by the companies. And if you can see, now I'll just enlarge this. So it's not visible. Onwards now you can see this is 2014, 15 onwards. So the United States had a lot of influential companies because they had the ones who were having their subsidiaries. So when you say that a company is powerful, it means that they have a lot of subsidiaries and they are also operating internationally. And international operations would have subsidiaries which would have some kind of a share with the parent company but not entirely. And would have 50% of the parent company and 50% their own shares. Then they could have 50 to 70 and onwards. So they had certain companies which would be operating in other countries and they were reporting their income, their earnings from those companies. And also know that usually when international trade takes place it's through the banks. And all the foreign exchange is converted via the banks. And that's the normal allowed rule. That International Bank of Settlement is also there so that they could monitor the transactions. And international banks usually what they do is that, for instance, if I'm going to be dealing in US dollars, so I have to pay whatever currency to the bank, and the bank is going to be, let's say I have to make payment to someone outside for whatever goods that they've given me, and I'm going to be making it in US dollars. So then the bank and that company might want to convert that back into its own currency like yuan. So what the bank would do is that it's going to accept the payment in dollars, convert it into yuan and give it to that company. It also depends upon the terms and conditions of the letter of credit, and that is for import and export. It's also mentioned in the invoices at the time of sale and purchase. So you can just see the progress that the number of companies in China from 95 to 98, Japan 57, 54 is actually reducing, but China is actually increasing. So this means that there were a number of companies which were actually rising in China, and China is doing a great economically speaking because they are doing a lot of exports. So you should know that when a company is doing exports, the currency pressure is actually upward, and it would mean that they are actually going to be having gain in the present transactions, but that could also spell a loss for future ones, because if your currency becomes too strong, the exports become very expensive for other countries to handle. Why? Because for instance, if I say dollar is from 100 to 150 now, that means the dollar actually against rupee has strengthened. Therefore, I would, whatever that I wanted to have, if I wanted to have a chocolate bar, or if it was for 400, it's going to be for maybe 550. So I would think twice about buying something that I could previously purchase for a lot less. So companies would, suffer loss in the long run if their currency is too strong. So they like to, keep it in a state where it is much more stable and not fluctuating as much. So the more the currency fluctuates, bad it is for their own books of accounts, because then they have to keep reporting income and losses. These are known as currency translation losses, because your balance sheet has to be in your own currency at the end of the day. So even if you purchase something from outside and all the subsidiaries are doing businesses, they report profits to the main parent company, which could be residing in China or Pakistan or whichever country is basically we are talking about. So the financial statements will be reported in the currency of the country in which the company is domiciled. So the incorporation would be as per the where the main focus of the company is, and they could maybe incorporate or invert their incorporation to some other country. They could relocate, but that's a different topic for now. What we are going to be talking about is when a company is situated in a country, and they're going to be talking in terms of that currency. So if the currency is fluctuating against other currencies a lot, so they have to frequently report losses or income, so their income would become unsteady or unstable or uncertain. And this way, this spells bad for the company. And as you can see that now China, they have tried to keep it more or less stable, and the number of companies actually now till 2018 has even risen more than that. So you can just simply see that this is all the same stuff where you need obviously licensing. It's sort of like a bank, and you can just see that's a foreign party. How do you do contractual agreements? So there's something which is known as a contract is like a letter of credit where you make a document with the help of a bank. So there's going to be an invoice coming out from, let's say, there's a person in Germany, they want to sell their equipment here to Pakistan. So they won't trust the person who's actually in Pakistan, because let's say they don't know me. I would just contact a company that, listen, I want so many radars from you. Okay. So now the person sitting over there who is actually representing some foreign company in Germany would say, listen, I don't know you. So if you want to accept in dollars or in any in francs or whatever, currency that we're talking about, I say that I'm going to be, paying you in terms of dollars, because that is the international currency. And they said, okay, fine, but I'm going to be sending you the product. You just simply look at it and see that this is the specification that as per which I have made that particular product. I would just see it and then make the payment after 3 months. But then the person would say, listen, I don't trust you because I don't know what you're going to be paying me, because the shipment would take 3 months. So I need to involve some bank which would deal with their bank. So my bank is going to give the guarantee to them. My bank will take money from me and give a guarantee to their bank that, okay, the payment is going to be, because this is known as international banking system. All these banks are aligned and merged together in transactions, not merged financially speaking. What I'm talking about in terms of transactions, they know how to deal with each other in terms of currencies, and there is just like a NIF in Pakistan, like so. There's an international exchange system with which the bank, for instance, the dealing with the US dollars will take place in bank in New York. Similarly for France, it's going to be in the central place of that country. So similarly for any kind of a joint venture that takes place, it has to be done through the bank with the invoice as per the specifications that I gave to that person. Those specifications would be in the letter of credit. Okay, so this is just the process in which licensing, and just go through this. So now they say that environment actually shapes. Now how the environment shapes the country, policies, demographics, it's all the culture. If I say, for instance, now current scenario between China and India, you can say that China wants to export, let's say, but India is having some kind of a tussle. And they would say, like, I'm going to be stopping all the exports coming from China. So now you can understand that this is a cultural or demographic, position is changing of one country, so their policies will change, and political scenario is that the person would want votes, and he would be wanting to wage a war. He's going to be trying for some aggressive tactics, and in this way, they could be stopping or halting or dramatizing something, so they would want to maybe switch the countries with which they're trading just to be more popular. So all these political aspects, the cultural ones, what the people need actually, what the need of the hour is, and they want to have, whether they're also quality conscious, quantity conscious. Japan is supposed to be a very good country to sell equipment, technology, but since it's very expensive, although if you see this yen looks very weak compared to dollar, it's supposed to be like 0.00 or something. But that is just like a coin, just the way cent is. Otherwise, yen is very strong. So the currency is strong, so people are a bit hesitant to buy Japanese product. And that's why it has a downward pressure for earnings for companies abroad. And the globalization is actually impacted this way because I don't know if you can see this, I'm going to be increasing the size. So you can see this, there's the economic system, technology infrastructure, which country is more adept at making technology at low cost. So Japan is adept at making technology, but it has a high cost of production. Then you need for that economic system. Because if you have factors of production that are expensive, even though you have these parties, but then economic system would not gel it. Then you have the globalization aspect. What is most required? If some people would want Japanese parts at any cost and want to boycott the Chinese Huawei, so they would go for Nokia. So in this case, globalization would matter where the trend at the time is. And then there's political and legal system. Like I said, they want to have some kind of war. They have some political motivations, and they will be stopping the trade anyway, irrespective of how the cost of production is going to be. And then there's a culture where the people are more focused on, as you can see, they're siding with the government. What is their culture? Cultural values. They are more towards their own products, and they're not very technology oriented, or they are more into, you can say, nostalgic realms, in the sense that perhaps they're not very, let's just say agricultural economy, they are towards organic stuff. So this would also depend upon their culture, what the values say. They are not into touching the genetic material of the products. They don't want to have anything to do with Bayer or Monsanto. So things like that. So culture matters, and the conservative aspect, conservative outlook would also matter in this case. So we have political legal systems. Now, okay, so they have, in this case, given an example of Iran and Venezuela. So they nationalized their industries, just like Bhutto nationalized in Pakistan, and that caused severe crisis in Pakistan economy because companies have invested, especially the private ones. So when you nationalize something, they are forcefully purchased from the owners at a lower cost than what it originally entailed the person who formed that company. So this is bad for the country overall. So when Iran also, many companies lost ownership and their assets, invested in oil exploration, just like last year when it froze the foreign currency. That caused a lot of loss to the economy. There are political risks likewise for other foreign governments. So you have taxes like Dubai, it's like tax-free zone where companies would like to have their businesses. Many companies have also relocated to China because of low cost production. And any double taxation rules, let's say the United States has double taxation, 35 to 40% corporate taxes, which are a lot, and companies are forced to move to other countries to lower their cost of production in this case. Now, I hope that you can just simply read up the theory. We've already studied chapter 14, you can just go back to this. Okay. Then you have harmonization, further harmonization, I guess. Because I've already discussed the harmonization aspect. Okay, so I'm just going to be discussing a bit about the accounting standards for America, a bit different. China is since socialistic and capitalistic both. So some of the institutions are state-run and they don't follow IFRS. And some of them follow IFRS, so public listed companies, and then there are private ones. And then there are the ones that are not public listed and they're government owned. So there are two streams different from each other. And then their calculation will be different. They will be following Chinese accounting standard system, and the other will be following international financial reporting standards. Similarly for US, it's generally acceptable accounting principles, or generally accepted accounting principles, such as GAAP, and they are a bit different from IFRS because sometimes they allow a bit of leverage, the other times they don't. For instance, in cash flows, they have policies to recognize the dividends, different from that in IFRS. Similarly, we have for Pakistan, we follow the European system of accounting, which is ruled or predominated by the UK or Britain. So now they say that although ISP does not have any authority, no regulatory authority in any country, but you need to have international recognition, and this is through the standard accounting system. Otherwise, nobody would be dealing with you, and this is a time of globalization. We need to export, so we need to make reporting standards which are more transparent, which are understood globally. So this you can just simply see that we have first in 2005 onwards, and before that we had IASs, and there were 40 to 41 ISs, and then we had IFRS, 15, and then 17, and onwards, and they're continuously increasing. So many countries are still converging, like Iran, Egypt, and China, and there are other countries which are also, slowly converging their accounting standards without, because they understand the need of the euro. Okay, now we talk about foreign currencies and exchange rates. Always know that for foreign currency, it is weak in terms of dollars. So that means for one currency, the dollar is going to be in decimal values. For instance, Pakistani currency. So one Pak rupee is going to be some decimal value for the dollar. But the dollar would be represented as multiples of that currency, which is weak. So that $1 is going to be for 150, 156 Pak rupees. Similarly, $1 is weaker than pound. So 1 pound would have more dollars. But if pound is to be expressed in terms of, a dollar is to be expressed in terms of pounds, there would be a decimal value. So $1 could be some decimal value, some fraction of the pound, because pound in this case is stronger. So again, I repeat that if the currency is strong, it's going to be expressed in multiples of the weaker currency's unit, and vice versa. So if the currency is weak, so it's going to be expressed as a fraction of the stronger currency. Okay? So for instance, I said that if you have dollar, so $1 would be actually 150. Okay. But now 1 rupee would be actually, it's going to be 1 over 150 for the dollar, as you can see, or you can just simply rewrite. So that is 150 rupees is equal to $1. So 1 rupee would be actually 1 by 150 dollars. Okay, so that is fractional value of the dollar for a rupee, and we're going to be following this rule. Any questions? So we have exchange rate fluctuations, already dealt with this. Now I've just given you the values of the currency. So now if there's Britain, pound is, like I said, pound is a bit stronger than dollars. So you can see that this is multiples of dollars in multiple units of weaker currency. For euro, again, it's stronger than dollars. So you can see multiples of dollars in terms of 1 unit of euro. And yen is very strong, but since it's the smallest unit for currency, it's not a currency node actually, it's just like a cent. So you can see that it's always in decimal value. So dollar is expressed in terms of decimals for a yen. Okay, otherwise yen is a very strong, it just seems that it's weak, it's not weak because it's just the smallest unit of a currency means. So they always keep the smallest unit because they deal with that this way. So it's just like a coin. Okay. So now for yen, it is in fractions of dollars by 0.008. Now peso, Mexican, and then Indian rupees, so you can just see all these are in fraction of dollars. Okay, now We have some time. Okay, let's just look at this exchange rates maybe used to determine how much one currency is equivalent to another. So we have a US company that owns a Japanese company 1 million yen. So if you want to convert this into dollars, so you have to multiply this amount with the dollars. So now 1 yen is equivalent to this fraction of dollars. So you multiply this with this to restate this amount. Okay, so it's just very simple. So multiply this with the dollars to convert it into dollars. So that means that when you want to convert one currency in terms of another, so if you want to convert one currency in terms of dollars, so you're going to be multiplying it with dollars. So if you want to convert one currency in terms of another currency, you're going to be multiplying it with the other currency. Convert it to that depending upon whether the currency is fractional value expressed in terms of the other currency. Okay. So again, this could be the alternate way of doing it is if you want to convert this back to this value, so it's going to be the reciprocal of this value now, okay? So you can just simply see that this is the reciprocal is how many yens to a dollar. So you take a reciprocal of this value, so you convert it into yen and then you multiply it with yen and then you can just get this value, okay? You get this value. It's very simple. So here it's just ordinarily just sale and purchase. So for Germany, it used to be initially it was mark, but then it was obsolete around the 1990s, and then we have all converted to euros. Okay, so now for E's sake we just do euros and it's 1.11 something. Then we have global sourcing, and we're done with the chapter basically. So as you can see, this is exchange rates. US domestic packaging, trucking, advertising companies, they are selling units. And they've just told you how they're going to be sourcing this. How? So we have US molds, and so these are Barbie dolls perhaps. So we have, for Barbie, let me just increase this so you can see. Alright, so these are the molds. Now different countries are involved. Okay, and how is this? Some problem with this. Anyway. Okay guys, as you can see that this is management. You have hairs provided by Japan, you have molds from some other country, then you have Taiwan. All these giving you oil. Saudi Arabia would give you oil. Taiwan would help you in perhaps with transporting of the stuff at cheaper cost. So for instance, if this is China, so you look at this, there are workers, okay, so there are thousands of workers. So now the company has, now you have read the details, illustrates the cost and exchange rates. Currency exchange rates are given to you: Saudi Arabian in Riyal, Taiwan, Taiwanese dollar, Hong Kong in Hong Kong dollar, Japan in yen, China in yuan, okay. So these are all expressed in terms of dollars. So it's weaker for dollars, so it's maybe, and if this is 0.6 real, so this is in terms of real. So whatever currency is in terms of dollars, then that would be the fractional value or the multiples depending upon whether the currency is strong or weak. So we have Taiwanese dollars expressed in terms of Taiwan for $1. So this is perhaps stronger. So we have yuan. So okay, I think the recording stopped in between. What we were doing is we were discussing some makes, and one of them is Barbie. And the global sourcing system says that there's different countries' contribution into making the products. For instance, there is management of Hong Kong to procure, decide to procure orders for barley, let's say. So they could have their management for a particular, let's say, dollar's worth of cost per barley in this case. Then you can have this management cost would mean that they've hired some managers to deal with the decision to purchase, procure, sell, or to make contracts and organize everything. So in this case, they would decide to have Japan, purveyors for the barley. Then you have molds from US, and there are workers, and then all these things. This is Saudi Arabia providing oil. They will be seeking help from Saudi Arabia, and then Taiwan for their own equipment. This could be some other product which is put in barley. And then there's China for workers, lower cost of production. When the barley is completed, it is exported finally from China to via these rails and then trucks and then submarines to the other part of the world, to US in this case. Now, each country would express in terms of its own currency the value of the product that they contribute in. If this is Saudi Arabia, it would be in riyals, Taiwan for Taiwanese dollars, China for yuan, Japan for yen, and then you have Hong Kong dollars. Total export cost would be in terms of dollars. That would be, individually measuring each currency's worth in terms of dollars. So if first dollar is strong, it will be expressed as fraction of a dollar in this case, and multiplied by the number of times that currency is being used. Then there was corruption scandal. And now they say that IMF and World Bank institutes policies, and one of them was to cut off funding to countries ignoring corrupt practices. Okay. Contract payments for Philippine road project was suspended. One example is also in Pakistan. They have terminated one of the extraction projects with the foreign company, and they've been fined. And I hope that that project is given anew to some other company, and they can get away with the fine. So we have these procedures for FCPA rules, which are also international rules for monitoring these practices. And so this is just simply look at these rules and regulations. So now just look at the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. This is amended in 1988. This is one of the more important aspects. Okay, let me just read out the details. I would like just one more question. Okay, now this is one of the brief exercises. Okay, so this is translating the amount of foreign currency into the equivalent amount of dollars. So you have 800,000 pounds. So now you just multiply it with the number of dollars. It was 1.41 dollars. So you just multiply. In order to convert it into dollars, you're going to multiply it with 1.41. For yen, it was multiplied with 0.008 because this is the dollar amount for yen. This dollar amount. And this euros was also 1.11 something. So this is the answer that you get for all these and onwards. Okay, so this is just a brief exercise. Similarly, they're asking you that a US company makes a purchase from a British company and agrees to pay a price of £2 million. How will the US company determine the cost of this purchase for the purpose of recording it in its accounting records? Okay, so this is US company will just convert this £2 million into its own currency, which is the dollar in this case, is multiplying with the total dollar amount. And it's going to suffer a loss if currency becomes too strong. The other country's currency would become too strong, you have to pay more dollars. Then you have how the US company can arrange for the payment of pounds to the British company is just going through the international bank. So what they do, just go to the bank. That bank will take dollars from them and convert it into pounds. Okay, so this is just going to be the pounds, right? Similarly, we just do one question from here. It says, okay, there's another question that I would like to discuss. I hope that they have given Okay, so there's a table here, okay? You just look at this table. The question says that the following table summarizes the US companies engaging in credit transactions to the bank, okay? The letter of credit, the import and export. So this is sales, okay? Now what happens is that when you're making sales, the foreign currency, in terms of foreign currency, what happens? This is not completely given to you. This is, you have to have an effect on the income, whether it's rising or falling, or there's going to be, in this case, as you can see, the sales, foreign currency falling. It means that you make a sale in terms of foreign currency, but then that currency value is falling, and you have already booked the transaction at a particular exchange rate. So when you fix the exchange rate and that currency is falling, so you're not going to be making the amount of money back that you have actually bargained for, okay? So now it is falling, but then this is going to be a loss to you, okay? So if currency is falling and you make a sale, so they are going to be giving you a weaker unit. So for instance, if America sells something to Pakistan for, let's suppose, at the time it was 100 rupees to a dollar, let's say, okay? Now dollar became stronger, that means my currency is weaker. So now they have made the sale, so I might be giving them more rupees, but the value would reduce for that money. So even if they are getting the same amount, but that value is lower. Okay, my currency has fallen to 150 rupees, so they should be getting to 150. But what they are actually getting is 100 for one product. So this is going to be giving us loss. In this case, it's going to be loss. Okay. So now, if the dollar is rising, but the dollar is rising for the purchases. Okay. So for purchase, now they have already settled them out. So even if the dollar is rising and they purchase something, it's not going to have any effect on their income. Okay. It's going to be having no effect. Because they are booked, they can't, otherwise they would have actually made a loss, because the dollar, they could have given them less amount because other currencies are becoming weak. But now, since they're purchasing something, and in this case they have booked the transaction, it's a credit transaction, and the dollar value is rising, so they don't have to, the other currency is not necessarily going to be impacting their sales value. Okay, so they're just purchasing is their cost. So if the dollar increases, the cost is not going to increase, the cost will remain the same. Okay, so it's not going to have any effect on their income. Like I say that America is purchasing something from Pakistan. So if the dollar keeps increasing, but I'm still going to give them that particular product, okay, and they're going to be making payment to me in terms of dollars to me. So those dollars perhaps will be fewer had that transaction not been fixed. But since that transaction is fixed and I'm getting the thing anyway, so my purchase cost would be in terms of dollars, and that dollar would not reduce. So even if it fluctuates, it rises, I'm still going to get that particular thing with me. It's not going to be having in the long run any effect on my income at that time. So it's not going to be having too much effect. Similarly, we have falling. There's no effect. Now what that could be? This could be for, okay, it's about common in this. So there's a loss. There's foreign currency is rising, foreign currency, and this is okay. When you have dollar, it's not going to have an impact because your currency is already dollar, reporting in the dollars. So there's no currency translation in this case, okay? But when there is foreign currency, then if it is rising, you are going to be paying more to them. So this is for the transaction in the purchase transaction. Okay? This is going to be a purchase transaction in this case. Similarly, we have in this case falling sales. So you just fill up these gaps. how they are going to be having, I guess it's a sales, and if it is, you have to look at the last part. It says having no effect. Like I said, it has to be US dollars. It's going to be US dollars. Because usually in US dollars, even if it is rising, it does not have a falling. When you make sales, you won't have much effect because you're not doing any currency translation at that point. But when you have purchase and there is gain, that means the currency is, the direction is actually falling. So you can just make a gain for purchase. So you have to pay less. But in terms of dollars, you don't gain or lose anything because you have to report the same amount. So currency translation is not offering much. Okay, I'm not going to be doing the whole question in this case because we don't have much time. Let's just look at this. It's a very simple question. They have given you the concept of 1 krone, Danish krone, for US dollars of 0.166. And in this case, 1 krone for 0.166 would mean this is 1, so this is 0.166 dollars to 1 krone. So $1 would be actually equivalent to 1 by 0.166 krone. So what you do is that you're going to be converting the dollars into krone, okay? Because you have to convert this value, and that is what happens. It's automatically understood with this. It's already in dollars. You cannot convert it into dollars. So you have to convert it into krone, because that is the rate that it is. This is the exchange rate data. Even if you don't read the question, you can immediately tell that this is the data. So that means we need to convert this for krone. How many? So that we have to already convert this value. So we have dollars. We have to multiply them with the krone value. So we need to know how many krones are going to be for per dollar. Okay, so this is 0.166 dollars, or fraction of a dollar, but we need to know how much a dollar would cost and how many krones are expressed in terms of dollars. So now this is 0.166. So it's going to be 0.1 by 0.166 is going to be equal to 6.024 krones. So $1 is going to be 6.024 krones, okay? And this, you're going to be multiplying with each value of the dollars. You just simply convert this. So now you have initially the materials, okay, so this is just say the material, the marketing department has determined that the United States and Great Britain are the two most variable markets. Crackle has enough excess capacity to produce only one batch. And whatever product, they have materials and labor. In terms of kroner, so it's 8,500 kroner. What you're going to do is revenue in terms of kroner. So $5,200 into 6.024 krone minus the material cost. The material cost was this value, so 8,500 kroners. So this is going to be revenue over here in terms of kroners minus the material cost, 8,500, then minus all other costs that are given here. So these are the costs which are these costs are basically the duties, the shipping costs, and you get the profit out of this. Okay, so they have given you also pounds. Similarly, you're going to be doing the same thing for the pounds. Okay, so you have, for pounds, you're going to be having the shipping cost. All this process is going to be repeated for pounds. So if you have 1 krone is equal to 0.115 pounds, so 1 pound would be equivalent to 1 over 0.115 krones. Okay, so this is going to be in multiples. So this is going to be 1 by 0.115. This is going to be equal to 8.69 krones. 69 krones, okay? And this is how you just compare the profit, and then you can just decide which currency is profitable in to do the business. And I thank you very much. See you next semester, next time. I hope that you can understand. You can just revert back to me if you have any problems. Best of luck, guys.